Hold the tab unit and turn it to the left edge. Then open the card reader cap. Insert the plastic pry in the gap of the card reader slot and detach the pad cover assembly carefully. Turn the tab unit to the other side and use your fingers to keep the gap open on the first side. Repeat the third step to unlock all locking latches around the pad cover assembly. Place the tab unit on a flat surface and remove the pad cover. Lift the battery from the tab unit and disconnect the battery cable from the mainboard connector. Then remove the battery from the tab unit. Lift the CPU shielding with your fingers and detach the CPU shielding carefully. Remove the 6 screws from the thermal module. Disconnect the thermal cable from the mainboard connector then remove the thermal module. Disconnect the mini card to mainboard FPC cable. Lift the foil that covers the screws. Remove the 3 screws from the mini card. Lift the mini card and release the mylar tape covering the antenna. Then, disconnect the antenna from the mini card and remove the mini card. Release the minicard FPC from the minicard. Lift the wireless LAN card, then remove it from the minicard. Disconnect the antenna from the 3G module. Remove one screw from the 3G module. Remove the 3G module from the mainboard. Release the foil covering the SSD card as shown. Remove one screw from the SSD. Remove the SSD from the mainboard. Release the mylar tape from the USB board cable and lift the USB cable as shown. Remove the 3 screws from the USB board. Disconnect the USB cable from the mainboard and remove the USB board. Disconnect the USB cable from the USB board. Disconnect the USB board cable from the USB board. Remove the mylar tape securing the camera module. Disconnect the camera cable from the mainboard then detach the camera module. Disconnect the camera cable from the camera. Remove the mylar tape securing the speaker cable. Remove the 4 screws from the speaker module. Disconnect the speaker cable from the mainboard then remove the speaker module. Disconnect the power adapter cable from the mainboard. Disconnect the LVDS cable from the mainboard. Release the cable lock, then disconnect the touch lens FFC from the mainboard. Disconnect the GPS mouse cable from the mainboard. Disconnect the microphone cable from the mainboard. Disconnect the camera cable from the mainboard. Remove the 7 screws from the main board. Remove the main board from the tab unit. Remove the 2 screws from the camera module. Remove the camera module from the tab unit. For 3G SKU only, 3G SKU is not available on the market as of the time this video was released. The 3G SKU may be available later. Disconnect the antenna from the GPS module. Detach the GPS module and the microphone module from the tab unit carefully. Separate the GPS module and the microphone module. Disconnect the GPS cable from the GPS board. Release the tape and foil on the GPS mouse antenna. Remove the GPS mouse from the tab unit. Disconnect the LVDS cable from the panel. Release all mylar tape and foil tape before you remove the pad LCD bracket. Release the antenna from the pad LCD bracket as shown. Remove the 6 screws on the pad LCD bracket. Remove the pad LCD bracket. Open the docking cover and remove the 4 screws. Hold the docking station as shown and use a plastic pry to detach the bottom case. Then remove the bottom case assembly. Disconnect the button board FFC from the LAN board. Disconnect the trace ball FFC from the LAN board. Disconnect the USB board cable from the LAN board. Disconnect the connector board cable from the LAN board. Remove the 3 screws on the LAN board. Turn over the LAN board as shown. Then disconnect the keyboard FFC from the LAN board and remove the LAN board. Remove the 2 screws on the USB board. Remove the USB board assembly from the top case. Remove the 2 screws on the connector board module. After you remove the 2 screws, turn the top assembly over as shown. Detach the docking holder cover. Remove the 2 screws on the docking guide pin bracket. Hold the connector board with your thumb and remove the docking guide pin bracket. Take out the connector board and disconnect the holder cable. Close the docking station cover and turn over the top assembly. Remove the ground cable and holder cable. Note: mass production units do not have a ground cable due to a change in the design. Release the foil tape attaching the top assembly. Remove the 2 screws on the button board. Remove the button board from the top assembly. Uncover the trace ball FFC and release the cable lock. Then, disconnect the trace ball FFC. Release the mylar tape on the trace ball FFC. Detach the trace ball FFC from the top assembly. Release the foil tape on the keyboard as shown. Remove the 9 screws on the keyboard assembly. Remove the keyboard cover bracket from the top case assembly. Remove the keyboard from the top case.